Ever imagine your brain could power a light bulb?
Yeah.
I mean, it can, right? That's your nervous system in action.
Yeah.
And today, we're taking a deep dive into this electrifying network.
Ooh, I like that. Electrifying, that's a good one.
We've got some great research lined up, and I think our mission is to really go beyond the basics here. We're talking mind-blowing facts and some really surprising connections that'll make you see your body in a whole new light.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It's true. I mean, the nervous system is responsible for absolutely everything we do, from, our thoughts to our movements, you name it.
Yeah.
It's all thanks to this intricate network.
So, okay, let's get this show on the road.
Just do it.
We know the central nervous system, the CNS, is like the CEO, like
Yeah.
calling all the shots.
Absolutely.
But what's fascinating to me is that even simple actions like, just picking something up involve this whole symphony of signals between the brain and the spinal cord.
You're exactly right. Think about something like taking a sip of water. I mean, your brain has to process the visual information, right? It has to send instructions all the way down your spinal cord to your hand
Yeah.
and then adjust your grip based on the feedback. Think about it, from the sensors in your fingers.
All those little nerve endings. Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-blowing how much is happening behind the scenes, just to do something simple, like take a sip of water.
Yeah. And your brain's doing that all the time without you even thinking about it, right? Like millions of things.
Millions.
All the time.
Millions and millions.
Yeah, it's kind of freaky when you think about it, how much your brain is doing.
It really is.
It's like the ultimate multitasker, the brain, right?
Yes, it is.
Let's zoom in on this command center for a second because, we always hear about the brain.
Yeah.
Okay, the brain. But we've got these different parts, right? We've got the cerebrum,
Yep.
we've got the cerebellum,
Yep.
and we've got the brainstem.
That's right.
I'm already intrigued, like what are these guys up to? Like what's their job?
Well, each part has its own unique role to play. Think of the cerebrum as the thinking brain, right? It's the largest part, and it handles things like language, memory, and even your personality.
Wow, so it's the cerebrum that makes us who we are.
Precisely.
Okay. Interesting. So what about the cerebellum?
Well, then we have the cerebellum. The cerebellum is all about coordination and balance. It's the reason you can walk without wobbling and dance without tripping over your own feet.
So it's like the cerebellum is like the choreographer of our movements.
Exactly.
I can see why that's so important, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially as we get older,
It's one of the first things to go.
Yeah. Okay, so, and lastly, we've got the brainstem, right?
That's right. The brainstem might be the oldest part of the brain.
Oh, wow.
But, it's in charge of keeping us alive, It controls those essential functions like breathing and heart rate. It works tirelessly even when we're sleeping, just keeping us going.
That makes sense. But what about all the nerves that branch out, like from the brain and spinal cord? That's going to be like a whole other system.
Absolutely. That's the peripheral nervous system, or the PNS for short.
PNS.
And it's like a vast communication network reaching every corner of your body.
So if the CNS is the command center, the PNS is like the field agents, like carrying out the orders.
A great way to put it.
Okay.
It carries messages from the brain and spinal cord to the muscles and organs, telling them what to do. But it also sends sensory information back to the CNS, allowing us to experience the world around us.
Okay, so it's a two-way street.
Two-way street, yeah.
Oh, this is already more complex than I imagined. And we have these two branches within the PNS, the autonomic and somatic nervous systems. I feel like we're about to unravel some serious secrets here.
We are.
Okay.
The somatic nervous system is all about voluntary movements, like raising your hand or taking a walk.
Right.
You're in control.
I'm in control. Okay.
But the autonomic nervous system,
Yeah.
that operates behind the scenes, controlling things like your heart rate, digestion, and breathing.
So it's like the autonomic system is the autopilot, like just keeping everything running smoothly without us having to think about it.
Exactly. And even within the autonomic nervous system, we have this fascinating balancing act between two branches, the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems.
Now, this sounds interesting.
It is.
Tell me more about this balancing act.
Imagine you're walking through a forest and suddenly come face to face with a bear.
Oh, no.
Your sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear,
Right.
triggering that fight or flight response.
Okay.
Your heart races,
Yeah.
your breathing quickens, and your body is primed for action.
So it's like an internal alarm system, like preparing us to either face the threat
Yes.
or just run like crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But once the danger has passed,
Okay.
the parasympathetic nervous system steps in to calm everything down.
Oh, okay.
It's like hitting the rest and digest button, slowing your heart rate and promoting relaxation.
Okay, so it's a constant push and pull between these two systems, kind of keeping our internal environment in check.
Exactly.
It's amazing how all of this happens automatically without us having to consciously control it.
It truly is.
Like, how do they know what to do, you know?
That's the beauty of it. But what's even more incredible is that this entire complex system, from the brain to the nerves that extend throughout your body,
Mhm.
is made up of billions of tiny cells called neurons.
Right, the
The
neurons. They're like
neurons,
the building blocks of this whole communication network, right?
precisely. And each neuron is a tiny marvel,
Okay.
able to receive, process, and transmit information using both electrical and chemical signals.
Okay. I remember we talked about action potentials, those
Right.
rapid electrochemical signals.
Yeah.
But it's hard to imagine how these tiny signals travel, like such long distances throughout the body.
That's a great question, and it leads us to one of the most fascinating aspects of the nervous system. The way neurons communicate with each other, they don't actually touch. Instead, they communicate across tiny gaps called synapses.
So it's not a direct connection. How do they bridge those gaps?
That's where things get really interesting. When an action potential, that electrical signal, reaches the end of neuron's axon, it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters.
Oh, okay.
Think of them like tiny couriers carrying messages across the synapse to the next neuron.
So it's a combination of electrical signals within the neuron and chemical signals between neurons.
Exactly. And different neurotransmitters have different effects. Some are excitatory, making the receiving neuron more likely to fire, while others are inhibitory, calming things down.
Wow, it's incredible how much is happening at the microscopic level to control everything we do. I'm starting to realize that the nervous system is like a giant puzzle, with each piece playing a vital role.
Absolutely. And we're just beginning to piece together this intricate puzzle. But before we dive into the next layer,
Yeah.
let's pause here and take a moment to let all this sink in.
Yeah, my brain is already buzzing with new information.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the nervous system. Last time, we left off with those incredible neurons and their microscopic communication system. Are you ready to explore even deeper?
Absolutely. I'm ready. I mean, we've covered some of the basics, but now I'm really itching to learn more about those three main parts of the brain. We touched on the cerebrum, cerebellum, and brainstem. What's fascinating to me is how each part like contributes to who we are, like our personality and our abilities.
Yeah. Let's start with the cerebrum. It's the largest part of the brain, and it's responsible for all those higher-level functions that really make us human. Think about things like language, problem-solving, decision-making, and even creativity. That's all happening in the cerebrum.
So it's like the cerebrum is the CEO of our brain, like
Right.
making all the executive decisions and stuff.
A great analogy.
Yeah.
And here's a fun fact. The cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres, right? The left hemisphere is often associated with logic and language, while the right hemisphere is linked to creativity and spatial awareness.
Oh, right. I've always heard about people being left-brained or right-brained. Is there any truth to that?
While it's true that certain functions are more dominant in one hemisphere, both hemispheres actually work together in a highly integrated way. It's not a simple case of one side being better than the other.
That makes sense. So what about all those wrinkles we see on the surface of the brain? They always look so complex in pictures. Like, why is the brain so wrinkly?
Yeah, those wrinkles called gyri and sulci are actually super important. They increase the surface area of the cerebrum, allowing for more neurons to be packed into a limited space. It's like nature's way of maximizing brain power.
That's amazing. So the more wrinkles, the more processing power.
You got it. Now let's move on to the cerebellum. Located at the back of the brain, this part is all about coordination, balance, and fine-tuning movements.
Right. I remember we talked about how the cerebellum helps us, dance without tripping and all that.
Uh-huh.
But what else does it do?
Well, imagine you're learning to play a new instrument, right? Or a new sport. The cerebellum is hard at work behind the scenes, helping you develop those smooth, coordinated movements. It takes information from your senses, muscles, and even the cerebrum, and uses it to adjust your movements in real time.
So it's like the cerebellum is our personal trainer, like helping us refine our skills and master new movements and stuff.
Exactly. It's constantly learning and adapting, which is why practice makes perfect.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Practice makes perfect. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the cerebrum and the cerebellum. What about the brainstem? You called it the unsung hero of the brain earlier.
That's right, the brainstem. Well, the brainstem might not be as glamorous as the cerebrum or cerebellum, but it's responsible for our most basic life-sustaining functions. Think about breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, even sleep-wake cycles, all controlled by the brainstem.
Wow, so it's like the brainstem is the control center for all those automatic functions that we like take for granted that we don't even have to think about.
That's right. It's working 24/7, making sure our body's running smoothly. And it's also involved in reflexes like swallowing, coughing, and sneezing, protecting us from harm.
Okay, so we've got the cerebrum, the thinking brain, we've got the cerebellum, the movement coordinator, and then we've got the brainstem, the life support system. It's incredible how these three parts work together to make us who we are.
And remember, this is just a simplified overview. Each of these brain regions is incredibly complex, with intricate networks of neurons and specialized areas that we could spend, hours talking about.
I can only imagine. And we've explored the central nervous system in quite a bit of detail now. What about the peripheral nervous system though? We touched on it earlier, but I'm ready to like dive deeper into how it, connects our brain to the rest of our body.
You're right. It's time to shift our focus to the intricate network of nerves that extend from the central nervous system. This is where the action truly unfolds, connecting our brain and spinal cord to the world around us.
It's like the peripheral nervous system is the bridge between our inner world and the external environment, bringing us information, about what's happening around us and allowing us to, interact with our surroundings and everything.
Precisely. It carries sensory information from our sense organs like our eyes, ears, skin, nose, and tongue to the central nervous system. This allows us to perceive the world around us.
So like when I smell freshly baked cookies or, feel a cool breeze on my skin, that's the peripheral nervous system relaying those sensations to my brain.
Exactly. It's also responsible for carrying motor commands from the central nervous system to our muscles and glands, enabling us to move, talk, and interact with our environment.
Okay, so it's a two-way street with information constantly flowing in both directions. Now, I remember we discussed the two branches of the peripheral nervous system, the somatic and autonomic nervous systems. Can you remind me about the difference again?
Of course, the somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements, things you consciously control, like reaching for a glass of water or typing on a keyboard. It's what gives you direct control over your muscles.
So it's like the somatic nervous system is our personal remote control for our muscles.
A great way to put it. And then we have the autonomic nervous system, which handles all those involuntary actions, things we don't consciously think about, like our heartbeat, digestion, and breathing.
Right, and within the autonomic nervous system, we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems constantly working to like maintain balance in our internal environment, right?
Exactly. The sympathetic system is like our fight-or-flight response, preparing us for action in stressful situations, while the parasympathetic system is the rest and digest response, calming us down and conserving energy.
So it's like a constant dance between these two systems, like one revving us up, the other calming us down.
Precisely. And this intricate interplay is essential for maintaining homeostasis, the stable internal environment that our bodies need to function optimally.
This is fascinating stuff. It's amazing how much is happening behind the scenes without us even having to think about it.
It truly is a testament to the power and complexity of the nervous system. Now, are you ready to dive even deeper into the microscopic world of neurons and their communication systems?
Absolutely, I'm hooked. Let's unravel the secrets of those tiny messengers. Okay, so we've journeyed, from the brain's control centers all the way to this vast network of nerves reaching every corner of our body. But I'm realizing there's this whole microscopic world that we haven't even explored yet. It's like zooming in on a map and finding a whole new level of detail.
That's a great analogy. And at this microscopic level, we encounter the true stars of the nervous system, the neurons. Remember, they're those tiny messengers responsible for transmitting information throughout the body.
Right. We talked about how neurons have these different parts, dendrites, axons, cell body, all working together. But how exactly do they communicate with each other? It just seems like there must be more to the story than just those electrical signals, those action potentials.
You're absolutely right. There's a crucial piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet. Synapses. Imagine a bustling city, right? With couriers delivering messages between buildings. Synapses are like those meeting points where neurons exchange information.
Okay, so the synapse is like a tiny relay station between neurons. But if the neurons don't actually touch, how do they, bridge that gap?
That's where things get really interesting. When an action potential, that electrical signal, reaches the end of a neuron's axon, it triggers the release of these chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. Think of them as those couriers carrying messages across the gap between neurons.
Okay, so we've got this combination of electrical and chemical signaling. It's like a high-tech communication system at the cellular level.
Exactly. And what's even cooler is that different neurotransmitters have different effects. Some are excitatory, telling the next neuron to fire and keep the message going. Others are inhibitory, telling the next neuron to, chill out and slow down the signal.
So it's not just about sending a message, it's about like fine-tuning the message and controlling the flow of information, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this intricate dance of neurotransmitters is at the heart of everything we do, you know? How we learn, how we feel emotions, even how we experience the world around us.
It's mind-blowing to think that these like tiny molecules have such a huge impact on our lives.
It really is. And what's even more fascinating is that this communication system isn't static. Our brains are constantly changing and adapting based on our experiences.
You're talking about neuroplasticity, right?
Yeah.
The idea that our brains aren't just, fixed, but can actually rewire themselves throughout our lives.
Exactly. Every time we learn something new, have a new experience, or even just think a thought, our brains are forming new connections and strengthening existing ones.
That's incredibly empowering. It means like we have the ability to shape our own brains and constantly evolve.
Absolutely. And this understanding of neuroplasticity has huge implications for everything from education to rehabilitation after injury. It really highlights the incredible adaptability and resilience of the human brain.
So it's not just about the structure of the nervous system, it's about its incredible potential for change and growth.
Precisely. And that's what makes it so fascinating to study and so crucial to who we are as humans.
Well, this has been an incredible journey. We've covered so much ground, from the big picture of the central and peripheral nervous systems down to the intricate details of neurons and synapses. I feel like I have a whole new understanding and appreciation for this amazing system that controls everything we do.
It's been my pleasure sharing this journey with you. And remember, we've only just scratched the surface. There's a universe of knowledge still waiting to be discovered about the nervous system.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring and keep asking questions. This is a journey that never ends, and the more we learn about our brains and bodies, the more we realize how much there is still to uncover. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.